18-year-old virgin was humiliated for her simple outfit. The laughter echoed through the bakery without any mercy. But a millionaire stood up, looking into her eyes, and what he did in front of everyone left the place in shock. If this story interests you, don't forget to subscribe to our channel and tell us from which city you are watching us. We continue. The aroma of freshly brewed coffee filled the kitchen of the old house as Ingrid carefully separated the porcelain cups on the sideboard. Her delicate fingers glided over the golden rims of the crockery, a family heirloom that Donna Lena treasured so much. The 19-year-old woman tucked her curly hair behind her ear, checking once again that everything was in order for the elderly woman she was caring for to make breakfast. The house, located in a traditional neighborhood of the metropolis, held stories within its walls that Ingrid was still trying to unravel. As a caretaker, she had learned to decipher the silences of Donna Lena, a reserved lady who spent hours in her private library, surrounded by dusty books and old photographs that she never shared with anyone. That autumn morning, Ingrid realized she was out of bread for breakfast. She checked her wallet. 5:35. A shy smile appeared on her lips as she remembered the time she had learned to make bread from one of the volunteers at the shelter where she grew up. It was one of the few sweet memories she had of her childhood as an orphan, when the smell of yeast and flour meant more than food. It was affection in the form of sustenance. "Mrs. Lena, I'm going to the bakery to get some fresh bread," Ingrid announced, receiving only a discreet nod from the elderly woman who was absorbed in an old novel. The modest salary she received, supplemented by the housing in the mansion, allowed her to live a simple but dignified life. It was more than she had at the shelter, she thought, as she descended the wooden stairs that creaked under her feet. The bakery was 2 blocks away. On the way, Ingrid observed the imposing mansions that shared space with more modest houses, a faithful portrait of the city's inequalities. Her thoughts wandered between memories of the shelter and her interrupted dreams, especially the dream of continuing her education. She had to drop out of school to work, but she carried with her some books borrowed from the public library, which she read in her free time. When she arrived at the bakery, the morning rush was intense. The aroma of warm bread made her stomach growl, reminding her that she hadn't eaten yet. She got in line, mentally counting the coins she had in her pocket. When it was her turn, the cashier, a woman with an austere expression, announced in a metallic voice, "The price of bread has gone up. It's $3.50 apiece now." Ingrid felt her face heat up. Her quick calculations showed that she couldn't afford the 2 loaves of bread she wanted. Before she could respond, an elegant woman behind her in line huffed impatiently. "Will it take long? I have an appointment," the client said, adjusting her designer bag on her shoulder and casting a disdainful glance at Ingrid's simple clothes. "Sorry, Ingrid started to speak, but was interrupted by a subtle push from the woman, which shifted her to the side. "If you don't have money, don't bother those who do," the customer added with a mocking smile, causing other customers to laugh. At that moment, time seemed to freeze. Ingrid knew all too well that feeling of invisibility, of being treated as less than a person. It was a familiar pain that had been with her since her days in the shelter, when people would walk past her, as if she were part of the decor. Her eyes began to water, but she held her ground, swallowing the lump that was forming in her throat. It was then that a deep, serene voice cut through the air in the bakery. "Excuse me, ma'am." All eyes turned to the back of the establishment, where a man in an impeccable suit stood up from his table. His firm footsteps echoed across the tiled floor as he approached the counter. He had an elegant bearing and a presence that commanded natural respect. His eyes, a deep brown, fixed first on the woman who had humiliated Ingrid, then softened as he met the young woman's gaze. The man approached the counter with a natural elegance that silenced the entire bakery. His well-cut suit and impeccable posture contrasted with the simplicity of the surroundings. With a gentle gesture, he placed some bills on the counter and said, in a firm but gentle tone, "Please provide a dozen French breads for the young lady." Turning to the woman who had humiliated Ingrid, he continued, "And as for you, I suggest you rethink your attitude. True elegance is not in the clothes we wear, but in the way we treat people." The woman, visibly embarrassed, mumbled something, inaudible and hurriedly left the bakery. The man then turned to Ingrid, introducing himself. Elias Müller, it would be a pleasure to invite you for tea at the cafe next door. Of course, if you can and want to. Ingrid hesitated for a moment. Her years in the shelter had taught her to be wary of strangers, but there was something in Elias's gaze that conveyed a sincerity that made her accept. Besides, Donna Lena would still be engrossed in her book for quite some time. The cafe was a welcoming place, with wood-paneled walls and large windows that let in the morning sunlight. Elias pulled out a chair for Ingrid and ordered them both a cup of chamomile tea. When they sat down, he didn't ask any intrusive questions or show any pity, something Ingrid immediately appreciated. "You know, miss," Elias began. "Ingrid," she added. "Ingrid," he repeated as if savoring every syllable. "There are people who confuse material value with human value. It's a misconception I've been fighting for years in my work." The young woman watched intently as he spoke. Elias had a peculiar way of gesturing, his hands moving with precision, as if he were drawing his words in the air. Little by little, she felt comfortable sharing a little of her story. "I work as a caregiver for an elderly woman," she revealed. "Mrs. Lena. You must know the blue house on Rua das Acacias." Elias's eyes lit up with recognition. "Lena Amaral? The literature teacher?" Ingrid nodded in surprise. "You never mention your past. You spend your days reading and writing in your diary." "She was one of the most respected university professors in the country," Elias explained, a note of reverence in his voice. "Her literary analyses were published internationally. Then one day she simply withdrew. No one really knew why." The revelation made Ingrid look thoughtfully at her teacup. How many secrets did that mansion still hold? How much was there still to discover about the lady who looked after it? "And you, Ingrid, what are your dreams?" Elias's question took her by surprise. She hesitated for a moment, but something about the way he looked at her, without judgment, with genuine interest, made her open up. He told her about his childhood in the shelters, about the volunteer who taught him how to bake bread, about his interrupted studies, and his burning desire to go back to school. "You know what I miss the most?" she said, a nostalgic smile on her lips. "The smell of new books. In school, I was always the first one to go to the library when new books arrived, just to smell the pages that no one had touched yet." Elias watched her intently, as if each word she said was an important revelation. After a moment of contemplative silence, he looked at his wristwatch and said, "I have to go now. I have an important meeting, but I'd like to make a proposal." He took a business card from his inside jacket pocket and handed it to Ingrid. "Think about it carefully. I have a greenhouse inherited from my late wife that needs special care. Someone with your sensitivity would be perfect for the job." Ingrid took the card with trembling hands. It read in elegant gold letters, "Elias Müller, CEO, Müller Sustainable Agriculture Group." "But I don't know anything about plants," she argued. Elias smiled, standing up. "You know what it means to be careful, Ingrid. And that's the most important thing. The rest can be learned." He placed some bills under the teacup and added, "Call me when you decide. No pressure." As she watched him leave, Ingrid held the card like a talisman. The morning sun filtered through the windows of the cafe, bathing it in a golden light that seemed to herald change. With the bread in her bag and a whirlwind of thoughts in her head, she got up to return to the mansion, where Donna Lena would certainly already be waiting for her breakfast. When Ingrid returned to the mansion, she found Donna Lena still in her favorite armchair, but something had changed. The book was closed on her lap and her eyes were staring out the window with a distant expression. The young woman began to set the breakfast table in silence, as usual, but the lady's voice surprised. "You took longer than usual today, Ingrid." There was a different note in her voice, something the young woman had never noticed before. It wasn't reprimand, but curiosity. Ingrid hesitated for a moment, her hands still busy with the porcelain cups. "I'm sorry, Mom. She took a deep breath, deciding to be honest. "I met someone at the bakery, Mr. Elias Müller." The name provoked an immediate reaction in Donna Lena. The lady sat up straight in her chair, her eyes taking on a shine that Ingrid had never seen before. "Elias Müller," she repeated, as if savoring every syllable. "It's been a long time since I heard that name." Lena stood up with unusual agility for her age and walked to one of the library shelves. Her fingers, scarred by time but still precise, slid down a row of books until she found a specific volume. It was an old copy, bound, in dark green leather. "Come here, girl," she called, sitting down at the library table. Ingrid approached, curious. The lady opened the book carefully, revealing a handwritten dedication on the first page. "To Lena, who taught me that literature is not only art, but salvation. With gratitude, Helena Müller." Helena was Elias's wife, Lena explained, her voice thick with memories. "She was my most brilliant student in college. She had a special gift for seeing beauty where others saw only ordinary, especially in her garden, in that greenhouse." Ingrid sat, absorbing every word. It was the first time Donna Elena had shared something so personal. "He offered me a job," the young woman revealed, "to take care of that very greenhouse." "Dat tea." Enigmatic smile appeared on the lady's lips. She closed the book and stood up again, this time heading to a small desk in the corner of the library. From a drawer she took out a yellowed envelope. "Maybe it's time you read this," he said, handing the envelope to Ingrid. "Helena gave me this letter weeks before she left. She said one day I would know who to give it to." With trembling hands, Ingrid opened the envelope. The handwriting was delicate but firm. "Dear Lena, as I write this letter, I look out the window at my greenhouse. The orchids you taught me to grow are blooming, stubborn, and resilient, just as you always said we should be. I know my time is coming to an end, but I cannot accept that this space which means so much to me could be lost. Elias is a wonderful man, but I know him too well. I know that after I am gone, he will turn the greenhouse into an untouched sanctuary of grief. That is not what I want. I want this place to continue to live, to flourish, to inspire. So I ask that you keep this letter until you find someone special, someone who understands that gardens, like people, need second chances to flourish. With eternal love, Helena." Ingrid finished reading with tears in her eyes. Lena watched her closely, as if evaluating her every reaction. Finally, the lady broke the silence. "Do you know why I accepted you as my caregiver, Ingrid?" The young woman shook her head. "Because I saw in your eyes the same strength I saw in Helena's. That silent determination of someone who has known pain, but has chosen not to give in to it." Lena took Ingrid's hands in hers. "Now tell me, what do you really want from life?" The question took Ingrid by surprise. No one had ever taken a genuine interest in her dreams. I want to study," she admitted, her voice gaining strength. "I want to learn everything I can. I want to make a difference in people's lives, like that volunteer did in mine when she taught me how to bake bread." Lena smiled, a genuine smile that completely transformed her stern face. "Then it's decided," she declared, standing up with renewed energy. "Take the job in the greenhouse. But what about you? Who will take care of—" "Don't worry about me," Lena interrupted. "I may look frail, but I still have much to teach you. And you, my dear, have much to learn." The lady walked over to her desk and began rummaging through other drawers. "In fact, I think it's time to dust off some old botany books I've been keeping around here." The next morning, Ingrid stared at Elias's card in her hands as she gathered the courage to make the call. The morning sun filtered through the curtains of the library, where Donna Elena had already sorted a small stack of books on gardening and botany. "The phone won't dial itself," the lady said, not taking her eyes off the book she was reading. There was a new dynamic between them since their conversation the day before, as if an invisible wall had crumbled. Taking a deep breath, Ingrid dialed the number. After 2 rings, Elias's deep, familiar voice filled the line. "Elias Müller." "Mr. Müller, this is Ingrid from the bakery." "Ingrid." His voice softened instantly. "I've been waiting for your call. Have you thought about my proposal?" "Yes, sir, I would like to accept." There was a pause on the other end of the line, followed by a sound that sounded like a smile. "Great. Can you come to my office this afternoon? I'd like to show you the greenhouse and discuss the details." After writing down the address, Ingrid hung up the phone with her heart racing. Mrs. Lehner watched her over her reading glasses. "Go get ready," the lady said, standing up. "I have something that might help you." Minutes later, Ingrid found herself wearing a skirt and blazer set that had belonged to Lena's daughter. The lady had never mentioned having a daughter before, and Ingrid realized there was a lot more to learn about her employer. "It was Bianca's," Lena explained, adjusting the collar of her blazer. "She would be your age now." There was a shadow in her eyes as she said it, but she quickly composed herself. "It looks perfect on you." Elias's office was in an office building downtown. Ingrid felt small as she walked through the marble lobby, but she remembered Lena's words, "Hold your head high. You have as much right to be there as anyone else." The secretary led her directly to Elias's office. It was a spacious space with floor-to-ceiling windows that offered a panoramic view of the city. The businessman welcomed her with a warm smile. "Welcome, Ingrid," he said, indicating a chair. "Would you like some coffee?" During the conversation, Elias explained the details of the work. The greenhouse was located in the back of his mansion, a considerable space that had been Helena's personal project. In addition to taking care of the plants, Ingrid would have the freedom to implement her own ideas. "Helena always said that a greenhouse is not just a place for plants to grow," Elias said, his voice softening as he mentioned his wife. "It's a space for transformation." "Donna Lena told me a little about her," Ingrid said. "She seemed like a special person." Elias looked at her with renewed interest. "Lena told you about Helena? That's surprising. She rarely talks about the past." "She actually gave me some botany books to study," Ingrid revealed. "And she lent me this outfit." The businessman stood up and walked to the window. "You know, Ingrid, when I saw you in that bakery, silently defending your dignity, you reminded me a lot of Helena. She also had that quiet strength." Turning to face her, he continued, "The salary will be in line with the market, with all the benefits. But more importantly, I want you to feel comfortable studying. We have a considerable library in the mansion, and I can help with courses if you wish." Ingrid felt her eyes well up, but she kept her composure. "When can I start?" "How about now? Would you like to see the greenhouse?" The trip to the mansion was made in a luxurious car with a driver. Elias explained about the neighborhood and his sustainable agriculture projects, but Ingrid barely listened. Her mind was focused on the new opportunity that was opening up in her life. When they finally reached the greenhouse, Ingrid held her breath. It was much larger than she had imagined, with glass and metal structures that reflected the sunlight. But it was clearly neglected. Wilted plants, broken pots, rusty tools. "I know it sounds like a challenge," Elias said, noticing her expression, "but something tells me you're exactly what this place needs." As they walked through the space, Ingrid began to have ideas. She visualized where she could create different environments, which plants would fit best in each area. Her eyes lit up with the possibilities. "Mr. Mueller." "Elias, please." "Elias," she corrected. "I promise. I'll do my best. Not just for the plants, but for everything this place stands for." He smiled, a smile that reached his eyes. "I'm sure you will, Ingrid, I'm sure you will." The following weeks brought a new routine for Ingrid. Her mornings began early in the mansion, preparing coffee for Donna Lena, who had now become a true mentor. The afternoons were dedicated to the greenhouse, where each day brought a different discovery. Elias had provided all the necessary materials, new tools, special soil, and various seeds. But it was during the initial cleaning that Ingrid made her first significant discovery. Hidden beneath an old orchid pot, she found a notebook bound in red leather, with the initials HM engraved in gold. Helena's diary. His hands trembled as he opened the first page. The handwriting was the same as in the letter Donna Lena had given him. The yellowed pages contained not only notes about plants, but deep reflections on life. "The greenhouse taught me that growth is not always visible. Sometimes roots need to grow stronger in the darkness, before flowers can bloom in the light." Ingrid spent hours absorbed in Helena's words, recognizing in each page a soul who, like her, found meaning in small gestures of care. She decided not to mention her discovery to Elias right away. Something told her that this was a gift that time would reveal at the right time. Meanwhile, the greenhouse was gradually being transformed. Ingrid established different areas, one for medicinal plants, another for ornamental flowers, and a special garden for organic vegetables. The knowledge she had acquired from Donna Lena's books came to life in her hands. "You have a natural gift," Elias observed one afternoon as he watched her work. He had made a habit of spending a few minutes in the greenhouse every day, always in the late afternoon. "I've learned that plants are like people," Ingrid replied, delicately pruning a branch. "Each one has its own time, its own way of growing." Elias walked over, eyeing an orchid that was beginning to show signs of recovery. "This was Helena's favorite," he said, his voice thick with emotion. "I thought I'd never see it bloom again." "Sometimes we just need a second chance," Ingrid said softly, realizing how those words applied not just to plants, but to herself. That night, when he returned to the mansion, he found Donna Lena with a different expression. The lady was sitting in her usual armchair, but on her lap was an old box of photographs. "Come here, girl," she called, indicating the spot next to her. "It's time for you to meet Bianca." The photographs revealed a radiant young woman with the same piercing eyes as Lena. In several of them she appeared in a garden, very similar to the greenhouse that Ingrid now tended. "My Bianca was passionate about botany," Lena explained, her voice breaking. "She was the one who introduced Helena to Elias. They were best friends in college." "What happened to her?" Ingrid asked softly. Lena took a deep breath, as if gathering strength. "Bianca was a free spirit, always wanting to help others. She decided to participate in an environmental preservation project during an expedition." The lady paused, her eyes filling with tears. "She got lost in the forest. The search lasted months, but—" Ingrid held Lena's hand, feeling the weight of that old pain. "Is that why you left the university?" "Yes. I couldn't walk into a classroom without seeing the empty seat where she used to sit. Helena was my only contact with the outside world. For a long time, she would come visit me, bring me plant seedlings, try to bring me back to life." Lena smiled sadly. "And now, years later, here you are, doing the same thing." "Madam—" "No, let me finish," Lena interrupted. "When you came here, I saw the same light in your eyes that Bianca had, that desire to do good, even when the world wasn't kind to you. That's why I kept Helena's letter all these years. I've been waiting for someone like you." At that moment, something fundamentally changed in the relationship between the two. They were no longer just employee and employer, or even caregiver and patient. It was as if fate had intertwined their stories in a way that they were only now beginning to understand. "Tomorrow," Lena said, discreetly wiping away a tear, "I'll teach you about the rare orchids Bianca grew. And then I want you to tell me all about the changes you're making to the greenhouse." And so, as night fell over the mansion, two women marked by different losses began to build something new, something that went beyond plants and gardens. It was a deep connection, based on mutual understanding and the certainty that sometimes destiny has mysterious ways of healing old wounds. The discovery of Helena's diary and Donna Lena's revelations brought a new dimension to Ingrid's work in the greenhouse. Each plant seemed to carry a story, a memory that needed to be honored and preserved. Mornings with Lena became real classes, where the former teacher shared not only botanical knowledge, but also stories from her academic life. "Look at this orchid," Lena explained, showing an old photograph. "Bianca discovered it during one of her expeditions. She managed to cultivate it here, adapting it to our climate. Helena later perfected the technique." Ingrid absorbed each piece of information with fascination, applying the knowledge to her work in the greenhouse. Elias, in turn, began to extend his daily visits. What had previously been just a few minutes of supervision turned into long conversations at sunset. "I never thought I'd see this place like this again," he said one afternoon, surveying the revitalized flower beds. The sun was setting on the horizon, casting a golden hue over the greenhouse. Ingrid was busy with a new species of fern she had received. Like what? Alive, he replied simply. After Helena left, I turned this place into a mausoleum. I preserved everything exactly as she left it, but I didn't allow anything new to grow. The young woman paused in her work, feeling the weight of those words. Sometimes the best way to honor a memory is to allow it to evolve, she said softly. Elias looked at her intently. You sound like her. I've learned a lot from your journal, Ingrid revealed, deciding it was time to share her discovery. She walked over to a restored cabinet and took out the red notebook. Elias's eyes widened as he recognized the object. With trembling hands, he picked it up, caressing the leather cover. Where? I found it during the initial cleanup, Ingrid explained. I've been waiting for the right moment to show it. Elias opened the diary, his eyes scanning the familiar pages. A loose photograph slid out. It showed Helena, Bianca, and a young Lena in a garden, all smiling for the camera. We were all so different, he murmured, but the plants brought us together. Helena always said that a garden is like a family. Each element has its role, its importance. Ingrid watched as he flipped through the pages reverently. At one point, he stopped at a particular entry. True love does not bind, it liberates. Like a plant growing toward the sun, we must allow those we love to find their own path to the light. Helena was right, Elias said, closing the diary, carefully. I needed to learn to let go. At that moment, something changed in the atmosphere between them. The setting sun cast elongated shadows across the greenhouse glass, creating a play of light and shadow that seemed to dance around them. Ingrid, Elias began, his voice softer than usual, you didn't just bring life back to this place. You showed me that it is possible to honor the past without living in it. He stepped closer, and Ingrid felt her heart race. There was a different energy in the air, a delicate tension like the first bud of a rare flower. She began, but was interrupted by the sound of her cell phone. It was a message from Donna Lena. Come home soon. I have something important to show you. Elijah noticed her hesitation. Do you need to go? Yes, she replied, feeling torn. Ms. Lena needs me. Of course, he said, regaining his professional demeanor. We'll continue our conversation tomorrow. As Ingrid prepared to leave, she noticed that Elias was still holding Helena's diary. Keep it, she said. It belongs to you. No, he replied, handing the notebook back. Helena left it here for a reason. I think she knew that one day someone like you would find it. On the way back to the mansion, Ingrid reflected on the moment she had just shared with Elias. Something was blooming there, as delicate as the buds she tended to every day. But just like in gardening, she knew that each thing has its own time to blossom. When Ingrid arrived at the mansion that evening, she found Donna Lena in her private office, a room that had always been locked. The lady was sitting at an old mahogany desk, surrounded by piles of yellowed documents and old photographs. Come in, dear, Lena called, gesturing to a chair next to her. It's time for you to see the project Bianca could never finish. On the table were detailed architectural plans and a sheaf of handwritten notes. Ingrid recognized Bianca's handwriting from the photos she had seen earlier. My daughter dreamed of creating an environmental education center, Lena explained, her fingers gently caressing the papers. Not just a place to study plants, but a space where people of all backgrounds could learn about sustainability, growing crops, and most importantly, starting over. Ingrid examined the documents carefully. The drawings showed an impressive structure: classrooms, laboratories, community greenhouses, and even a specialized library. Why are you showing me this now? Ingrid asked softly. Lena stood up, walking over to a small safe built into the wall. With precise movements, she turned the lock and removed a leather folder. Because yesterday, when I heard you talking about your ideas for the greenhouse, I heard Bianca's voice. The same enthusiasm, the same vision. She opened the folder, revealing legal documents. This land adjacent to Elias's mansion belongs to me. Bianca had chosen it for her project. Ingrid's heart raced as she realized the magnitude of what was being shared. All these years I kept these plans hidden away, waiting, I don't know for what, maybe for someone who could understand Bianca's dream as if it were their own. Mrs. Lena, You don't have to say anything now, the lady interrupted gently. Just think about it. The land is there, the financial resources too. Bianca had everything prepared. All that's missing is someone with enough courage to turn these plans into reality. At that moment, the doorbell of the house rang, surprising them both. It was an unusual time for visitors. Lena frowned, but her eyes soon softened when she saw who it was through the peephole. Elias, she said, opening the door. What a pleasant surprise. The businessman walked in, looking slightly awkward, an unusual trait for someone usually so sure of himself. In his hands he carried an old box. Sorry about the lateness, he said, but after our conversation in the greenhouse, today I felt I needed to bring these. His eyes met Ingrid's briefly before returning to Lena. These are the last things Helena brought from your house, Professor. I thought it was time for them to be returned to you. Lena received the box with trembling hands. When she opened it, she found notebooks, photographs, and, to her surprise, a sealed envelope with her name in Helena's handwriting. She asked me to hand this over only when we found someone capable of continuing Bianca's project, Elias explained. Today, watching Ingrid work in the greenhouse, I knew it was time. The lady opened the envelope with reverential care. As she read, silent tears streamed down her face. Finally, she looked up at Ingrid. Helena knew, she said, her voice breaking. She always knew that one day someone special would come along to bring all the pieces of this story together. Elias approached the desk, recognizing the scattered plans. Bianca's plans, he murmured. So you were thinking? Yes, Lena replied. I think it's time we turned dreams into reality. Ingrid remained silent, absorbing the magnitude of the moment. The lives of Helena, Bianca, Lena, and Elias, all of them converging in that moment, in that room, like threads of a complex tapestry that was only now revealing its complete design. What do you think? Elias asked, turning to Ingrid. His voice was soft, almost hesitant. The young woman looked at Bianca's plans, at Helena's letter in Lena's hands, at Elias's expectant face. In her heart, she felt a growing certainty that all the paths of her life, the orphanage, the hardships, the seemingly chance encounters, had led her here. I think, she replied, her voice firm, we need to start planning. The following weeks were a whirlwind of activity. The project that had previously existed only on paper began to come to life through meetings, planning, and shared dreams. Elias made his team of architects available to update Bianca's original plans, while Lena delved into her academic archives, retrieving contacts and research. Ingrid, in turn, divided her time between taking care of the greenhouse and studying the project in detail. Mornings still began in the mansion, but now conversations with Lena went on for hours, full of ideas and possibilities. Bianca wanted the center to be accessible to everyone, Lena explained, showing old notes. She believed that knowledge about nature should not be a privilege for the few. One particularly busy afternoon, while Ingrid was organizing seedlings in the greenhouse, an unexpected visitor surprised her. It was the woman from the bakery, the same one who had humiliated her weeks ago. Her face was different, stripped, of its previous arrogance. Miss Ingrid, she called hesitantly, my name is Renata. I came to apologize for my behavior that day. Ingrid paused her work, watching the woman curiously. Elias told me about the educational center project, Renata continued. I actually came because I need help. My daughter Sophia is going through a difficult time in her teens, and I heard that you have developed a therapeutic gardening program. The news took Ingrid by surprise. She had actually started experimenting with gardening techniques for emotional support, but she had no idea that it was already spreading throughout the city. Please, Renata begged, her mask of superiority completely undone. Sophia doesn't talk to me anymore. She spends her days locked in her room. When I heard about this project, I thought that maybe... Bring her tomorrow, Ingrid replied, surprising herself with the speed of her decision. We start at 9 a.m. After Renata left, Elias emerged from behind one of the plant shelves. He had witnessed the entire conversation. "You never cease to amaze me," he said, stepping closer. "You've just turned a former adversary into an ally." Ingrid smiled, turning her attention to an orchid that was beginning to sprout. Helena wrote in her diary that sometimes we need to be like plants, flexible enough to bend, strong enough not to break. Elias watched her with an intensity that made her heart race. In the last few days, something had changed between them. Their gazes lingered a little longer. Their silences carried more meaning. "Ingrid," he began, his voice softer than usual, "there's something I need to tell you." But before they could continue, they were interrupted by the bustling arrival of one of the architects, carrying new blueprints for the project. The moment dissipated like dew in the morning sun. Later that evening, Ingrid found an envelope on her desk in the greenhouse. Inside was a single sheet of paper with Elias's elegant handwriting. "Sometimes the most important words are the hardest to say. How about dinner tomorrow night? There's an Italian restaurant that Helena loved. I'd like to share more memories with you." Ingrid held the invitation to her chest, feeling her heart dance. Outside the greenhouse, the sun was setting, painting the sky in shades of pink and gold. A gentle breeze stirred the leaves of the plants, as if nature itself celebrated this moment of possibility. On her desk, Helena's diary was open to a specific page. "True love is like a well-tended garden. It takes time, patience, and dedication. But when it blooms, oh, when it blooms, it makes the whole world more beautiful." The Italian restaurant was located on a quiet street in the city's historic sea center. Ingrid arrived a few minutes before the scheduled time, wearing a navy blue dress lent by Donna Lena. It was Bianca's favorite, the lady had said, her eyes shining with excitement as she helped Ingrid with the final adjustments. The maître. Dal led her to a discreet table at the back of the establishment, near a window that overlooked a small illuminated garden. Elias was already waiting for her, elegant in his dark suit, but with a different expression than usual. Softer, almost vulnerable. "You look beautiful," he said, standing to pull out her chair. This was Helena's favorite place for special occasions. The atmosphere was welcoming, with candles on the tables and soft music in the background. On the walls, old black and white photographs told the story of the restaurant, which had been in the same family for 3 generations. "Helena discovered this place by chance," Elias said as the sommelier poured the wine. "It was a rainy afternoon. She was looking for shelter and ended up here. She was enchanted by the garden in the back. She said it was a little oasis in the middle of the city." Ingrid looked out the window at the garden. Even at night, she could make out the vines climbing the stone walls and the well-tended shrubs forming a winding path. "The more I learn about Helena, the more I feel that she had a special gift for finding beauty in the most unexpected places," Ingrid commented. Elias smiled, a smile full of memories. "Yes, she did. Do you know what she told me when we first met? That I was like a lonely oak tree needing to learn that sometimes you have to let other plants grow nearby." The conversation flowed naturally over dinner. Elias shared stories about his early years with Helena, about how she helped him transform his company into a model of sustainability. Ingrid, in turn, talked about her days at the orphanage, about the volunteer who taught her how to bake bread, about her interrupted dreams that were now beginning to take on new life. "Sophia starts the gardening program tomorrow," Ingrid commented as they enjoyed dessert. "I'm a little nervous, to be honest." "Why?" "What if I can't help her? What if this whole project is too big for me?" Elias put down his fork and looked Ingrid straight in the eye. "You know what I admire most about you, your ability to turn doubts into action. You don't just dream. You make it happen." There was an intensity in his gaze that made Ingrid's heart race. "Helena wrote something in her diary about moments like this," he continued, his voice softer. "She said that there are moments in life when we must be brave enough to allow new gardens to bloom in our hearts." Elias paused, taking a deep breath before continuing. "Ingrid, over the past few months you have not only brought life back to the greenhouse, You have shown me that it is possible to honor the past while building a new future. At this point, they were interrupted by an elderly waiter who approached the table with a small vase of orchids. "Excuse me," he said, placing the vase on the table. "Donna Helena always reserved this table when she had something important to celebrate, and she always asked us to place an orchid like this. She said it was a symbol of new beginnings." Ingrid looked at the flower, recognizing it immediately. It was the same species that was beginning to bloom in the greenhouse, the one that meant so much to Helena. "Giuseppe has been working here for 40 years, Elias explained after the waiter had left. "He's known Helena since she discovered this place." "It's amazing how she's still present," Ingrid murmured, delicately touching a petal of the orchid. "In every place, in every person she's met." "Yes," Elias agreed, his hand finding hers on the table. "And you know what's even more amazing? How she seems to have paved the way for you to get here." The touch of his hands sent an electric current through Ingrid's body. There, in the soft candlelight, with the orchid as a silent witness, something was fundamentally changing between them. "Elijah, You don't have to say anything right now," he interrupted gently. Just allow me to be a part of this new story you're building, not just as your employer or your friend, but as someone who is learning to blossom again. Thanks. To you." The soft music continued to play in the background. The night continued its course outside, but for Ingrid and Elias, time seemed to have paused in that perfect moment, where past and future met in a silent promise of a new beginning. The morning after dinner, Ingrid arrived at the greenhouse earlier than usual. She wanted to get everything ready for the first session with Renata's daughter, Sophia. The still-rising sun cast delicate shadows through the glass, creating ethereal patterns on the floor. As she organized her tools and separated the seedlings she would use, her thoughts kept returning to the night before. The gentle touch of Elias's hand on hers, the sparkle in his eyes when he spoke of new beginnings, the orchid that seemed to have been placed there by fate itself. His reverie was interrupted by the arrival of Renata and Sophia. The teenager, a 15-year-old girl with dyed purple hair and a closed expression, kept her arms crossed in a clearly defensive posture. "Good morning," Ingrid greeted, keeping her voice soft and casual. "Sophia, I'm so glad you could come. I needed help with some special seedlings." The girl just shrugged, but her eyes scanned the room with barely concealed curiosity. Renata seemed about to say something, but Ingrid stopped her with a discreet gesture. "Mrs. Renata, why don't you come back in 2 hours? I promise to take good care of Sophia." After her mother left, a heavy silence fell over the greenhouse. Ingrid continued her work calmly as if she were alone. After a few minutes, Sophia approached a particularly beautiful fern. "That's different," he commented, almost whispering. "It's a rare species," Ingrid explained, keeping her tone casual. "It was almost lost when I found it here. A lot of people thought it was hopeless, but look at what it's like now." Sophia gently touched one of the leaves. "How did you get it?" "Patience, a lot of care, and the certainty that every plant deserves a second chance." Ingrid paused, observing the girl's reaction. "Do you want to learn how to take care of it?" "To her surprise, Sophia nodded. Over the next hour, Ingrid taught the teenager the basics of fern care. Sophia proved to be an attentive student, asking pertinent questions and demonstrating a natural delicacy in handling the plants. "Did you know that some species of ferns can survive in seemingly impossible environments?" Ingrid commented as they worked. "They are masters of adaptation, of finding light even in the most unlikely places." Sophia stopped her work for a moment, thoughtful. "Sometimes it feels like there's no light anywhere," she murmured, so quietly that Ingrid almost didn't hear her. "I know exactly how that feels," Ingrid replied softly. "I grew up in an orphanage, you know. For a long time I thought my life would always be like this, colorless, without possibilities. But then I learned that, like plants, sometimes we just need a little space to grow, someone to believe in us." Sophia looked up, meeting Ingrid's eyes for the first time. "How did you do it?" Change everything, I mean. One step at a time. One plant at a time. Ingrid smiled. And most of all, learning that it's okay to not be okay sometimes. The important thing is to keep trying to grow. At this moment, they were surprised by the arrival of Elias. He stopped at the entrance of the greenhouse, observing the scene with a smile. "Sorry to interrupt," he said. "I just wanted to see how the first day of the program was going." Sophia, surprisingly, did not retreat into her previous defensive posture. Instead, she proudly pointed to the fern she had helped to care for. "Ingrid is teaching me about adaptation," she explained, with a confidence that clearly surprised everyone, including herself. Elias exchanged a meaningful look with Ingrid. "She's a great teacher at this," he commented softly. "She's teaching us all." When Renata returned 2 hours later, she found a different Sophia. The girl was still quiet, but there was a new spark in her eyes. Before leaving, she turned to Ingrid. "Can I come back tomorrow?" "Of course," Ingrid replied, her heart swelling with this small victory. "The fern will be waiting for you." After mother and daughter left, Elias approached Ingrid. "Impressive," he said. "In just one morning." "Sometimes all someone needs is a safe space to grow," she replied, arranging her tools. "That's what I learned at the orphanage, from that volunteer who taught me how to make bread. A small gesture of care can change everything." Elias took her hand, repeating the gesture from the night before. "Bianca's project couldn't." "Be in better hands," he said. "You're not just continuing a dream, you're transforming it into something even more special." In the weeks that followed, word of the therapeutic gardening program spread through the city like wildflowers. What began with Sophia soon blossomed into something bigger. Single mothers seeking a place of peace, seniors battling loneliness, young people coping with anxiety, all finding solace and purpose among the greenhouse's plants. One particularly busy morning, while Ingrid was guiding a group of teenagers in planting herbs, an unexpected visitor caused a stir. Miriam, the volunteer who had taught Ingrid how to make bread at the orphanage, appeared at the entrance to the greenhouse. "I couldn't believe it when I saw your picture in the paper," Miriam said, her eyes brimming with tears. "My little baker turned garden keeper." The reunion was emotional. Ingrid introduced her former mentor to everyone, explaining how that woman had changed her life with a simple gesture of affection. The teenagers, many of whom had come from similarly vulnerable situations, listened in fascination. "I always knew you would do something special," Miriam said as they walked through the greenhouse. "You had that sparkle in your eyes, even on the hardest days." "You were the one who planted the first seed," Ingrid replied, holding her old teacher's wrinkled hands. "You taught me that caring is a form of love." Miriam's visit brought a new dimension to the project. She began coming regularly, teaching the young people baking techniques while Ingrid tended the garden. Soon a small oven was set up in a corner of the greenhouse, filling the room with the comforting aroma of fresh bread. "It's amazing how everything connects," Elias observed. One afternoon, as he watched a group of teenagers learn to make whole wheat bread with Miriam. "Every person who comes in brings something new, something that seamlessly intertwines with the whole." Ingrid smiled, watching Sophia, now a regular participant, patiently explain to an elderly woman how to properly rise dough. The girl's transformation was remarkable. Her smiles were more frequent, her posture more confident. "Do you know what Helena wrote in her diary about connections?" Ingrid asked, picking up the red notebook she always kept nearby. "She said that we are all like plants in a big garden, different species, different needs, but all connected by the same roots of humanity." Elias watched her with that special look he now reserved just for her. Ever since dinner at the Italian restaurant, something had changed between them. It was a subtle change, like the slow blossoming of a rare flower, delicate but inevitable. "Ingrid," he began, his voice soft, "I need to tell you something. I've been talking to the company's board of directors, and they've approved a significant investment in the project. We want to turn this into an official institute, with you at the helm." The news took Ingrid by surprise. "Elias, I don't know if I'm ready. I don't have the proper training, administrative experience. But there's something much more important," a familiar voice interrupted. Donna Lena had arrived silently and now joined the conversation. You have your heart in the right place and the ability to see the potential in people just as you do with plants. The lady approached, carrying an old folder. Besides, you won't be alone. I've been organizing my academic contacts, several. Of my former colleagues have expressed interest in participating as consultants and teachers. Ingrid looked around the greenhouse, now so different from the abandoned space she had found months ago. The glass walls reflected the light of the setting sun, creating a kaleidoscope of colors on the lush green plants. The sound of laughter and conversation mingled with the aroma of fresh bread and damp earth. Helena was right, she murmured, more to herself than to anyone else. Sometimes we just need a chance to blossom. At that moment, Miriam called everyone's attention. Come, the first batch of bread is ready. The group gathered around the oven, where Sophia proudly handed out slices of the still warm bread. The familiar aroma brought tears to Ingrid's eyes, tears of gratitude, of recognition for the long journey she had come since her days at the orphanage. Elias took her hand discreetly, a gesture that had now become natural between them. So, what do you say? Will you accept to direct the Helena Muller Institute of Environmental Education and Human Development? Ingrid squeezed his hand gently in response. On one condition, she said, a smile playing on her lips. I want the first class to be made up of children from the orphanage where I grew up. It was already part of the plan, replied Donna Lena, exchanging a knowing look with Elias. Bianca wouldn't have wanted it any other way. News of the Institute's creation spread quickly throughout the city. Journalists began to show up, interested in the story of the young orphan who was revolutionizing the way the community dealt with environmental education and social development. But not all the attention was positive. One particularly hectic morning, Renata arrived at the greenhouse visibly distraught, carrying a local gossip magazine. On the cover, a sensationalist headline questioned the relationship between Ingrid and Elias, insinuating hidden agendas. Ingrid, forgive me, Renata said, handing over the magazine. I think I know who's behind this. Marlene Vermeer, my old friend from the club. She's always had an interest in Elias ever since Helena. Don't worry, Ingrid interrupted, putting the magazine aside without even opening it. Plants teach us that strong roots are not shaken by passing winds. Even so, the situation worried her, not for its own sake, but because of the impact it could have on the project. Elias, upon hearing the gossip, reacted in a surprising way. He organized a press conference in the greenhouse. I want everyone to see exactly what's going on here, he explained, as the crew prepared the space. We're not going to hide or be ashamed of what we're building. On the day of the press conference, the greenhouse was at its best. Sophia and other young people from the program served fresh bread to the journalists, while Miriam proudly explained how cooking was integrated into the therapeutic project. Donna Lena, elegant in her classic suit, presented the academic foundations of the program. When the time came for Elias to speak, he surprised everyone, especially Ingrid. Many have questioned the motives behind this project, he began, his voice firm. Some have suggested personal interests, others have doubted its seriousness. So let me be very clear. Yes, there is a personal interest involved. He paused, his eyes meeting Ingrid's. My late wife, Helena, always believed that gardens have the power to heal souls. She worked tirelessly with her friend Bianca, daughter of our beloved Professor Lena, to create a space where this healing could happen. When they both passed away, that dream lay dormant until Ingrid arrived. Elias walked over to where Ingrid was, taking her hand gently. Yes, we are building something special together, not just an institute, but a new beginning. And yes, I found in Ingrid not just a partner for this project, but someone who taught me that it is possible to honor the past while building a new future. In the audience, Renata smiled with tears in her eyes, while Sophia, next to her, took pictures of everything with her cell phone. Miriam hugged Donna Lena, both visibly moved. This institute, Elias continued, will be a living testament to the transformative power of care. A place where orphanage children, like Ingrid once was, can discover their own gifts. where people of all backgrounds can learn that, like plants, everyone deserves a chance to flourish. After the press conference, as the journalists dispersed, Marlene Vermeer approached Ingrid. Her face, previously marked by bitterness in the photos in the society columns, now showed genuine regret. "I was wrong," she admitted. "About everything. You've built something extraordinary here." Ingrid smiled, offering him an orchid seedling. "It's never too late to start over. Plants teach us that every day." That night, after everyone had left, Ingrid found Elias watching. The sun set through the glass of the greenhouse. The last light of day danced between the leaves, creating golden shadows. "Thank you," she said, stopping beside him, "for everything." Elias turned to her, his eyes shining with deep emotion. "No, Ingrid, I'm the one who thanks you for showing me that some endings are just new beginnings in disguise." And there, among the plants that had witnessed their entire journey, they shared their first kiss, soft as petals, strong as roots, promising as a new dawn. The months that followed were intense. Construction of the institute progressed rapidly, transforming the land next to the mansion into a modern and sustainable educational complex. Bianca's original plans came to life under the careful supervision of architects specialized in bioconstruction, every detail designed to harmonize nature and learning. Ingrid divided her time between supervising the construction work, coordinating the existing programs in the greenhouse, and taking an intensive management course that Elias had encouraged her to take. Her evenings were spent studying, often in the mansion's library with Donna Lena as her tireless tutor. "Bianca would be proud," the lady commented one evening, watching Ingrid pore over business books. "You have the same sparkle in your eyes that she had when she defended her thesis." Her relationship with Elias also flourished, although they kept a low profile in public. Their favorite times were in the late afternoons, when they would share tea in the conservatory, discussing ideas for the institute while watching the sunset through the glass windows. It was during one of these moments that Sophia brought some worrying news. "Ingrid." The teenager ran into the greenhouse, her cell phone in hand. "You have to see this." It was a post on an influential social network, shared thousands of times. A former employee of the orphanage where Ingrid grew up made serious accusations about her past, insinuating problematic behavior and making up stories that never happened. "I can't believe this," Sophia muttered indignantly. "Everyone knows you're amazing." Elias, who was watching the scene, remained strangely calm. "Maybe," he said, "it's time to turn this challenge into an opportunity." The next morning, Miriam appeared at the greenhouse accompanied by a surprise. 5 former employees of the orphanage, including the former director, Donna Clara. They all came voluntarily to defend Ingrid and tell the true story of her time at the institution. "Ingrid has always been our light," said Donna Clara emotionally. "Even when she was little, she took care of the younger children, told them bedtime stories and shared the little she had." The statements were recorded and, with the help of Elias's communications team, transformed into a series of moving testimonies. But it was Ingrid's reaction that surprised everyone. "I don't want to just defend my reputation," she said during a staff meeting. "I want to use this to bring visibility to a bigger cause." Thus was born the project, Roots and Wings, an initiative that would document the success stories of people who, like Ingrid, had grown up in foster care. The project quickly gained support from celebrities and business people, transforming itself into a national movement. "Inawa have the gift of transforming adversity into flowers," Elias commented one evening as they walked through the garden of the institute under construction. "I learned from plants," Ingrid replied, pausing to watch a small sprout breaking through the soil. "Sometimes it's the most challenging moments that make us grow stronger." The couple was surprised by Donna Lena, who approached with an old envelope in her hands. "I found this today organizing Bianca's files," she said, handing the envelope to Ingrid. "I think now is the right time for you to read it." It was a letter from Bianca, written shortly before her last expedition. "Dear Mother, if you are reading this letter, it is because you have found someone special to continue our work. Someone who understands that true education is not just found in books, but in the transformative power of care. Do not dwell on the sadness of my departure. Remember what plants teach us, that each ending carries within itself the seed of a new beginning. May our project be that seed, growing and multiplying through the hands of those who come after me. With eternal love, Bianca. Ingrid finished reading with tears in her eyes. Elias hugged her gently, while Donnalena smiled serenely. It's amazing how her words seem written for this exact moment, Ingrid commented. Maybe they were, Lena replied. Bianca always said that the universe has its own way of connecting, the dots we can't see. At that moment, a group of children from the orphanage arrived for their gardening class. Their laughter echoed through the space under construction, bringing to life dreams that previously existed only on paper. Shall we go? Elias called, extending his hand to Ingrid. The children are waiting to learn about the new seedlings. And so another day began at the Institute, where each challenge was seen as an opportunity for growth, each criticism transformed into an impetus for change, and each small victory celebrated as proof of the transformative power of love and care. Autumn had arrived, painting the leaves on the trees in shades of gold and red. The Institute was nearly complete, a stunning complex of sustainable buildings integrated into nature, just as Bianca had dreamed. Every space had been designed to foster learning and connection. Classrooms with green walls, state-of-the-art labs, community gardens, and of course, the original greenhouse, now expanded and renovated. On a particularly busy morning, Ingrid was supervising the installation of the last pieces of equipment when Renata appeared with surprising news. The city's elite club wants to make a significant donation to the Institute, she announced, barely containing her excitement. And it was Marlene who proposed the idea. Marlene's transformation from antagonist to supporter was further proof of the project's power. She had become a regular presence at the greenhouse, bringing other influential people to learn about the work. You know what's amazing? Said Sophia, who was now working as a junior monitor for the program. Everyone who comes here ends up changing. It's like the plants have some kind of magic. Ingrid smiled, looking at the teenager who had grown so much in the past few months. Sophia was no longer that shy girl. She had transformed into a confident and compassionate young woman, inspiring other teenagers with her story. It's not magic, Ingrid replied. It's the power of care and acceptance, something I learned from a young age from people like Miriam. The afternoon brought another exciting surprise, a visit from a group of orphanage directors from different parts of the country, interested in implementing similar programs in their institutions. Among them was Donna Clara, now the coordinator of a project that connects different foster homes. What you have built here, Ingrid, the former principal said, goes far beyond an educational institute. It is a model for how we can transform lives through care. Elias, who was accompanying the visit, could not hide his pride. In recent months, his relationship with Ingrid had grown stronger, based on mutual admiration and the sharing of ever bigger dreams. I still wonder how I didn't see it before, he said during a break between meetings. How I didn't realize that Helena's greenhouse needed to keep living, growing, transforming. Sometimes we need to lose something precious to learn to value new beginnings, Ingrid replied, remembering the words in Helena's diary. The day ended with an intimate ceremony in the greenhouse. Miriam had prepared special breads using herbs grown by the students themselves. Donnalena, surrounded by her former academic colleagues who now made up the faculty of the Institute, looked rejuvenated. Just look, she said to Ingrid, pointing to a group of children playing among the flower beds. Every smile here is a flower that Bianca and Helena planted, even without knowing it. As the sun set, casting its golden light through the glass of the greenhouse, Ingrid felt Elias approaching. He was carrying something in his hands, a small vase containing a rare orchid. I found it this morning, in a forgotten corner of the greenhouse, Hitai explained. It's a species that Helena and Bianca developed together, but it never came to flower until today. The flower was extraordinarily beautiful, with petals in shades of pink and gold that seemed to capture the evening light. It's like they're here, Ingrid murmured, gently touching the petals, celebrating with us. "They are," replied Donna Elena, who had approached silently. "In every life transformed, in every dream realized, in every new beginning." The group remained in contemplative silence, watching the last rays of sunlight dance among the plants. It was a moment of profound understanding, that some dreams are bigger than a single life, that some stories need to be continued by new hands that love like plants, always finds a way to bloom again. The official opening of the Helena Mueller Institute was scheduled for a week later, and the final preparations were proceeding at a rapid pace. Ingrid divided her time between meetings with the teaching staff, supervising the final installations, and caring for the greenhouse, which continued to be the beating heart of the entire project. One particularly busy morning, while organizing documents in her new office, Ingrid received an unexpected visitor. It was Pedro, the orphanage's former caretaker, carrying an old box in his arms. "I found this while cleaning out the basement," he said, setting the box on the table. "I thought you should see it." Inside the box were dozens of drawings, all made by Ingrid during her childhood in the orphanage. Most of them depicted colorful gardens, imaginary places where giant flowers grew to the sky and children played freely. "You've always drawn gardens," Pedro said with a nostalgic smile, "even before you knew you'd be tending one day." Among the drawings, Ingrid found something that made her heart stop, a yellowed letter addressed to her, dated 15 years ago. It was from the volunteer who had taught her how to make bread, not Miriam but another one, who had briefly passed through the orphanage. "Dear Ingrid, you may not remember me. I only volunteered for 3 months. But I've never forgotten the curious look on your face as you watched me work in the kitchen. Today I found one of your drawings lying in the garden, a little girl watering flowers that were bigger than herself. I need to tell you something. My real name is Helena Mueller. I come to the orphanage discreetly because I believe that love can blossom in the most unlikely places. I don't know if our paths will cross again, but I hope they will. Always remember, like the plants you love to draw so much, you too will find your way to the light. With love, Helena." Ingrid reread the letter several times, silent tears streaming down her face. All the pieces began to fit together, the inexplicable feeling of familiarity she had felt when she first entered the greenhouse, the immediate connection to Helena's diary. "Elias needs to see this," she murmured, carefully putting the letter away. But before he could look for him, Sophia burst through the door, panting, "Ingrid, you need to come to the greenhouse now. The rare orchid, the one you and Elias found, it's different." In the greenhouse, a small group had already formed around the plant. The orchid that Helena and Bianca had developed together had not only fully bloomed, but had also developed a unique mutation. Its petals, normally pink and gold, now displayed a never-before-seen pattern, with delicate spirals in shades of blue. "It's impossible," whispered Donna Elena, who was examining the flower with a magnifying glass. "This variation, she is completely new, an entirely original species." Elias arrived at this moment, and Ingrid immediately showed him the letter. He read it silently, his eyes filling with tears. "Helena was here," he said finally. "All those years ago, she was already planting seeds for the future, even without knowing it." "Not just seeds," Ingrid replied, indicating the unique orchid. "She left a gift that was only now ready to bloom." Miriam, who was watching the scene, added, "Like that first bread-making lesson, sometimes a small gesture of love can take years to reveal its true meaning." News of the new orchid species quickly spread throughout the scientific community. Researchers wanted to study it, and specialized magazines asked for interviews. But for Ingrid, the true significance went far beyond the botanical discovery. "We will call her Orchidea Helena Beatrix," she announced during a staff meeting, in honor of 2 women who, without even knowing it, were weaving the threads of destiny that would bring us here together. That night, after everyone had left, Ingrid remained in the greenhouse, contemplating the unique orchid in the moonlight. Elias found her like that, lost in thought. "What are you thinking about?" he asked, hugging her from behind. "How mysterious life is," she replied. Helena knew me when I was just a dreaming child. Bianca never got to know me, but somehow their stories were destined to intertwine with mine. Like this orchid, Elias said, looking at the flower. It took years to reveal its true beauty. Ingrid smiled, leaning back against him. You know what makes me most emotional? Thinking about how many other stories are still waiting to blossom here. The moonlight continued to bathe the greenhouse, creating dancing shadows among the plants. It was as if the space itself celebrated that discovery, that connection that transcended time and proved that, like the rarest flowers, some encounters are predestined. The eve of the Institute's inauguration brought a special energy to the space. The gardens were immaculate, the greenhouse glowed in the morning sun, and a special exhibit had been set up in the main lobby. Ingrid's childhood drawings, side by side with photographs of the Institute's construction process, telling a story of transformation and hope. Sophia, now coordinator of the youth program, guided a group of visitors through the exhibition. And here, she explained, indicating a particular drawing, was a little girl's dream that she didn't yet know would one day come true. The drawing showed a huge garden where children of all colors played among giant flowers. In the corner of the page, a small note written by Helena, discovered along with the letter, "Your dreams are seeds. Keep watering them." Donna Lena watched, from her special chair in the lobby, her eyes shining with pride. Beside her, a framed photo of Bianca smiled at the visitors as if she too were part of the celebration. "Professor," said one of her former university colleagues, "you have truly revolutionized the concept of environmental education with this project." "No," she corrected gently. "Ingrid revolutionized it. I just saved the seeds until I found the right garden to plant them in." In the center of the greenhouse, the Helena Beatrix orchid had become a special attraction. Researchers confirmed it. It was indeed a unique species, a natural mutation that combined characteristics never before seen. A discreet plaque told its story, connecting it to the legacy of two extraordinary women. Miriam, who now coordinated the Institute's healthy eating program, had baked special breads for the occasion, using ingredients grown in their own gardens. The familiar aroma filled the hallways, mingling with the scent of flowers. "Every loaf of bread carries a story," she explained to visitors, like the first one I taught Ingrid to make, which ended up being the first seed of all this. Renata, who had become one of the main supporters of the project, arrived accompanied by a group of business people. "See," she said, indicating a group of teenagers teaching planting techniques to younger children, how care naturally multiplies when it finds fertile soil. Elias found Ingrid in her favorite spot, the little bench in the greenhouse, where he could watch the sunset through the glass. She was leafing through Helena's diary, now almost a Bible of the Institute used to inspire new generations. "Ready for tomorrow?" he asked, sitting down next to her. "Almost," she replied, showing him a specific page from the diary. "I was just rereading this." It was one of Helena's last entries. The true purpose of a garden is not just to create beauty, but to inspire others to discover the beauty they can create. Every flower that blooms is a reminder that life always finds a way to begin again. She was right, Elias said softly, as always. Ingrid closed her diary, observing the movement in the Institute through the glass walls of the greenhouse. Children from the orphanage played in the gardens. Teenagers explained the cycle of plants to interested visitors. Old adversaries chatted amicably about future projects. "Do you know what moves me the most?" she asked. "Seeing how each person who comes here takes a little bit of this transformation with them. It's like Helena wrote, every flower that blooms inspires others to bloom. And to think that it all started with 5 reais and 35 cents in a bakery," joked Elias, making her laugh. "Actually," Ingrid corrected, "it started much earlier. With a volunteer teaching an orphan how to make bread, with 2 friends dreaming of an education project, with a teacher saving letters and dreams until the right moment." The sun continued its downward path, painting the sky in shades of pink and gold that resembled the petals of the special orchid. In the garden, the first stars began to appear, like small points of light promising that, even after dusk, there would always be hope for a new dawn. The day of the inauguration of the Helena Müller Institute dawned with a special light. A fine drizzle fell over the gardens, making the flowers shine as if they were covered in tiny diamonds. Ingrid arrived early, before the sun had even fully risen, and found Donna Lena already in her chair in the library. "I couldn't sleep," the lady confessed, a serene smile on her face. "I spent the night rereading Bianca's notes. It's like she's here watching her dream come to life." The opening ceremony was scheduled for 10 o'clock, but people began arriving early. Among them was a special group, all the children from the orphanage where Ingrid grew up, wearing green t-shirts with the Institute's logo, a stylized orchid that combined elements of Ingrid's childhood drawings with the unique pattern of the orchid Helena Beatrix. Sophia led a team of young counselors, all former participants in the greenhouse program, who now helped welcome visitors. Her transformation was remarkable. The shy girl of months ago now radiated confidence and purpose. "Every child who comes here," she explained to a group of journalists, "finds not only a space to learn about plants, but to discover their own value." In the experimental kitchen, Miriam and her team prepared special treats for the celebration. The aroma of fresh bread mixed with the scent of flowers, creating a welcoming atmosphere that made everyone feel at home. "Every recipe tells a story," she explained to curious visitors, "like this herb bread, made with ingredients grown by our own children." Renata arrived accompanied by a surprising group. Former members of the elite club who had once criticized her were now on the Institute's advisory board. Marlene, in Heimatso particular, had become one of the most dedicated volunteers. "It's amazing how a space can transform people," Renata said, watching the movement. "Or maybe it's just the power to see beauty, where before we saw only differences." Elias found Ingrid in the greenhouse, where she was making the final adjustments to a special flower arrangement. She was wearing a sea-green dress, a gift from Donna Lena, which made her look like part of the garden itself. "Nervous?" he asked softly, stepping closer. "A little," she admitted, "but it's a good kind of nervousness, like the butterflies in your stomach before something wonderful happens." At that moment, Pedro, the former caretaker of the orphanage, entered the greenhouse carrying something that brought tears to Ingrid's eyes, the first apron she had ever used to make bread, carefully preserved all these years. "I thought this should be part of the exhibition," he said, "to show that big transformations can start with small gestures of love." The time for the ceremony was approaching. The main auditorium was packed with officials, business people, educators, families, and occupying the places of honor, the children from the orphanage. Donna Lena would be the first to speak, followed by Elias and finally Ingrid. Before they went on stage, Elias took Ingrid's hand. "There's something I need to tell you first," he whispered, "something I've been saving for the right moment." But before they could continue, they were interrupted by a growing hubbub in the auditorium. Through the main entrance, an unexpected group arrived, survivors of the expedition where Bianca had disappeared, bringing with them an extraordinary discovery. "We found this among the belongings left behind at the expedition base," the group leader explained, handing Donna Lena a battered but still legible notebook. Bianca had catalogued a species of orchid that had never been seen before, one that looks exactly like the one that bloomed here. The notebook contained detailed drawings and scientific notes that proved the Helena Beatrix orchid was not a random mutation. It was a species that Bianca had discovered on her last expedition and that had somehow mysteriously found its way into Helena's greenhouse. "How is this possible?" Ingrid whispered in wonder. "Perhaps," Donna Lena replied, her voice choked with emotion, "some things are beyond our understanding, like love, which finds ways to blossom even when we think all is lost." The buzz in the auditorium grew louder, but Elias kept his eyes fixed on Ingrid. "What I wanted to tell you," he began again. However, the lights in the auditorium began to dim, signaling the beginning of the ceremony. The moment would have to wait, but something in Elias's eyes said that when the right time came, it would be even more special than Ingrid could have imagined. The inauguration ceremony began with Donna Lena taking the stage, supported by Sophia. The former teacher, who had lived in seclusion in her mansion for so long, now radiated renewed vitality. "Many years ago," she began, "my daughter Bianca told me something I have never forgotten. Mum, gardens are not just places where plants grow. They are places where dreams take root and hopes blossom." Today, looking at this institute, I see that she was right. The lady paused, her eyes sweeping around the crowded auditorium. This place is more than an educational center. It is living proof that love, like the most resilient plants, always finds a way to sprout, even in the most unlikely soils. It is testimony that no dream is too small when cultivated with dedication. Elias was the next to speak. Standing on the stage, his gaze met Ingrid's in the front row. "When I lost Helena, I transformed her greenhouse into a sanctuary of longing. But she, in her wisdom, had already planted the seeds of renewal. Through a young girl she met in an orphanage, through a letter kept for years, through an orchid that waited for the right moment to bloom." His voice cracked slightly before he continued. "This institute does not only carry Helena's name, it also carries Bianca's dream, Lena's dedication, and Ingrid's transformative love. It is a place where stories intertwine like vines, where destinies meet like different species in the same garden." When it was Ingrid's turn, she came on stage carrying something special, the orphanage's old apron and Helena's diary. "My story began with a simple gesture, a volunteer teaching an orphan how to make bread. At that moment, I learned that caring is a form of love that transcends words. Years later, another volunteer, who I only now know was Helena, saw me drawing gardens and believed in my dreams. She opened the diary to a marked page. Helena wrote here, 'Every flower that blooms is proof that life always finds a way to begin again.' Today, as I look at every face in this auditorium, I see this truth manifesting itself. I see it in Sophia, who transformed her pain into purpose, in Renata and Marlene, who discovered that it is never too late to change, in the children at the orphanage, who now have a space to cultivate their own dreams." It was at this moment that Elijah rose from his chair, unexpectedly stepping onto the stage. His eyes shone with restrained emotion. "Ingrid," he said, taking her hands, "there's something I've been trying to tell you, something Helena wrote in her diary, but only now does it make complete sense." He opened the diary to a page Ingrid had never seen hidden on the back cover. "When true love blooms, it doesn't erase the love that came before. It just makes it grow in a new, stronger, more beautiful way. Like a garden that renews itself each season, keeping its roots but always creating new flowers." Then, to everyone's surprise, Elijah knelt down. "Ingrid, you didn't just bring life back to Helena's greenhouse. You showed that it is possible to honor the past while building a new future. Will you build that future with me? Will you marry me?" The entire auditorium held its breath. Ingrid, with tears in her eyes, looked at Donna Lena, who was smiling with maternal approval, at Sophia, who was barely containing her joy, at the children from the orphanage, who were now part of her extended family. "Yes," she replied, her voice brimming with emotion. "Yes, I want to build every garden possible with you." The explosion of applause was interrupted by an extraordinary event. The Helena Beatrix orchid, which had been brought for the ceremony, began to release a soft perfume that filled the entire auditorium. It was a unique aroma, never before smelled, as if nature itself were blessing that moment. "It's a miracle," whispered Miriam, who knew the species well. "It has never smelled like that before." "No," Donna Lena corrected gently, "it's love. The kind of love that transcends time, that brings people together, that transforms lives. The kind of love that makes gardens bloom in the desert and dreams come to life." And so, under the magical scent of the orchid and the emotional applause of the audience, another chapter of this extraordinary story began to be written. A chapter about new beginnings, about dreams that blossom in unlikely places, and about the transformative power of love that, like the most resilient of plants, always finds a way to grow and multiply. The months following the opening of the Institute were filled with activity. The project had become a model of success, attracting visitors from all over the country and even from abroad. But in the midst of all this excitement, another special event was being prepared, the wedding of Ingrid and Elias. The couple decided that the ceremony would be held in the greenhouse itself, which had now been completely transformed. The plants had grown exuberantly, creating a breathtaking natural setting. The Helena Beatrix orchid, which had not stopped blooming since the inauguration, occupied a prominent place. "It's as if the space itself was preparing for this moment," commented Sophia, who now, in addition to being the coordinator of the youth program, had become one of Ingrid's best friends. On the morning of the big day, Ingrid woke up early in Donna Lena's house, where she still had a room. The lady was waiting for her in the library, holding an old blue velvet box. "This belonged to Bianca," she said, opening the box to reveal a delicate pearl necklace. "She always said she would save it for a special moment. I think that moment has come." While helping Ingrid get ready, Donna Lena shared another surprise. "I found another one of Bianca's diaries," she revealed. In the last pages, she wrote something that seems to have been written for today. "The most beautiful gardens are those where different flowers come together, each maintaining its unique beauty while creating something even more special together." Miriam arrived soon after, bringing not only the bouquet of flowers grown in the greenhouse, but also a basket of special breads, made with the same recipe she had taught Ingrid so many years ago. "To remember that the best new beginnings sometimes start with the simplest gestures," she said emotionally. The greenhouse had been decorated with natural elegance. Flowering vines formed natural arches, and small lights had been discreetly placed among the foliage. The benches were simple, polished logs, covered with handmade cushions made by the mothers who attended the institute. The guests began to arrive, a unique mix of people that perfectly represented the essence of the institute. Children from the orphanage, dressed in specially made clothes, carried small vases of flowers. Renata and Marlene, now inseparable friends, coordinated the final details of the decoration. Elias waited at the makeshift altar, with the glass wall of the greenhouse as his backdrop, through which the afternoon sun gently streamed in. Beside him, a small altar had been prepared with significant items: Helena's diary, the letter found at the orphanage, Ingrid's old apron, and a photograph of Bianca and Helena smiling together. When the music began, a soft melody played by a string quartet made up of students from the institute, everyone turned toward the entrance. Ingrid emerged beaming, led by Pedro, the caretaker who had guarded her drawings for so many years. Her dress, created by a local designer who had been inspired by the Helena Beatrix orchid, was a mix of soft shades of green and pink, with small, gold details that resembled the pollen of the flowers. Bianca's necklace shone softly around her neck. Donnalina, sitting in the front row, held an embroidered handkerchief as she watched the scene with teary eyes. Beside her, an empty chair had been decorated with white flowers, a place of honor for Bianca. The celebrant, a former university professor who had known both Helena and Bianca, began the ceremony with words that touched everyone present. "We are gathered here not only to celebrate the union of two people, but to witness how love, like the most resilient plants, always finds a way to flourish. This story teaches us that endings are not always endings. Sometimes they are just the beginning of something even more beautiful." Elias and Ingrid had written their own vows. He began, "Ingrid, you taught me that honoring the past does not mean living in it. With you I learned that each day is a chance to plant something new, to see beauty growing in unexpected places. I promise to be your partner in every garden you want to cultivate, in every dream you want to realize." With tears in her eyes, but a radiant smile, Ingrid replied, "Elias, you have shown me that sometimes we need to lose our feet to discover that we can put down roots in new places. I promise to be by your side in every season, celebrating the moments of blossoming and keeping hope in the moments of winter. I promise to care for our love as I have learned to care for plants, with patience, dedication, and the certainty that each day brings a new chance to grow." At that moment, something extraordinary happened. The Helena Beatrix orchid began to release its special perfume, filling the greenhouse with a fragrance that seemed to embrace everyone present. It was as if Helena and Bianca were there, blessing the union that in some mysterious way they had helped to build. A year has passed since the greenhouse wedding. The Helena Müller Institute had become a national reference center for environmental education and human development. The Roots and Wings project had already been implemented in more than 20 orphanages across the country, transforming lives through the healing power of gardens. On a sunny spring morning, Ingrid walked through the greenhouse, watching a group of children learning about orchid cultivation from Sophia, now a biology graduate and head of the Institute's educational program. "Just look," Sophia explained, pointing to the Helena Beatrix orchid, which continued to bloom splendidly. "How a single flower can tell so many different stories." The children listened in fascination as she told them about Helena, Bianca, and how their dreams had intertwined to create this magical space. Among the young listeners was Lucas, a boy from the orphanage who reminded her so much of Ingrid as a child, always drawing imaginary gardens and asking questions about plants. Donna Lena, who now divided her time between supervising academic research and telling stories to the children at the Institute, watched the scene with a serene smile. The Blue Mansion had been transformed into a specialized library, where her books and Bianca's diaries inspired new generations of scholars. Miriam continued her baking classes, now expanded into a sustainable gastronomy program that taught families how to make the most of food grown in community gardens. The aroma of fresh bread still filled the hallways each morning, mingling with the scent of flowers. Renata and Marlene had become ambassadors for the project, traveling around the country to help other communities implement similar programs. The elite club that had once defined them was now a fundraising center for socio-environmental projects. On the main wall of the Institute, a permanent exhibition told its story through images: Ingrid's childhood drawings, photographs of Helena and Bianca, construction records and memorable moments from the first year. In the center, a phrase from Helena's diary had been engraved in gold letters: "The true miracle of gardens is not just in the flowers that bloom, but in the lives that are transformed as we cultivate them." Elias found Ingrid looking at the exhibit, her eyes shining with tears of gratitude. He hugged her from behind, his hands resting gently on her belly, where the newest seed of love in that garden of intertwined stories was growing. "What are you thinking about?" he asked softly. "How amazing life is," she replied, leaning back into his embrace. "How one act of kindness can multiply in ways we could never imagine. How love, like plants, always finds a way to grow." At that moment, as if responding to his words, the Helena Beatrix orchid released its special scent, filling the room with its unique fragrance. It was a constant reminder that some stories never really end. They just change, like the seasons, in a well-tended garden. And so, in that space where dreams had taken root and hopes had blossomed, a new generation began to learn that love, when cultivated with care and dedication, has the power to transform not just gardens, but entire lives.